Prime Big Deal Days are here with 2 days of big savings exclusively for Prime members. You'll feel like a VIP.
Right this way. Your hairdryer deal is waiting.
Sweet. Deals from clothes to electronics. It's on Prime Big Deal Days, October 11th and 12th.
Chris Whittingham has made his triumphant return all the way from great broadcasting success and Apple spending a lot of time making Apple look good because Apple needs a lot of help, as we all know. They have purchased all the people and all of them work for Apple. We all have a daily and weekly charge that Apple just takes from our account. And I, at this point, can't even keep track of what it is that Apple's taking from me.
I just hope MLS season pass is one of them.
They're giving it all.
Be one of the charges.
They're giving it all to Whitty. I am grateful as well here to have David Samson because, Stugotz, I told you, I've been wanting to talk to him about what's going on. There's a lot of serious stuff going on, and we'll get to the silly sports stuff in a second. Billy's calling an FIU game tonight, which I'm very excited
Full
about.
play-by-play?
I'm one of the analysts.
Nice.
Yeah.
For the full 60 minutes?
Are you the two? Full game.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
You the two?
It's Vice night today.
You the number two guy?
No, we don't need to get into numbers.
Three-man booth?
David, you're invited to join if you want. I heard that didn't go well last time. I didn't invite you to something.
Are you going to play it straight, Billy?
We're figuring that out still. We'll see how that goes. I think I know what they need me for. And
How much prep have you done on UTEP?
Analytics.
Well, it's UTEP, so I know that much. I'm cramming. I'm not going to lie. There's going to be a little bit of cramming going on because things have been a little hectic around here lately, so some cramming going on.
Who's UTEP played so far?
UTEP, they're 1-5.
That doesn't answer his question.
Well, they had a bye week. They're coming off of a bye, so they're fresh. But it looks like their fourth-string quarterback.
Do you know what UTEP stands for?
University of Texas El Paso. Boom.
A good start.
I suggest that you print a roster, Billy.
Oh, I'm good. Don't worry. I'll be okay.
Get the flip chart. The flip chart in the press box is massive.
The minors.
Both rosters, either side. Depth charts in the middle. Pronunciation guide down the bottom. Yeah. Massively important for a
rough
broadcaster.
loss to Louisiana Tech last game, Dan.
Who is their one win against?
Their one win is against Incarnate Word.
Is it Word or Ward?
I mean, it's WORD.
That's Word.
Yeah.
Incarnate Word. Yeah. Didn't Ricky Williams used to coach Incarnate Word?
He was the running backs coach. Yes, that is correct.
Billy, what is the amount of money you will be paid for this?
I'm doing this as a gesture out of the kindness of my heart. Yeah, for my alma mater.
Advice?
What's that?
Why are you doing that?
Well, I want to do it for my alma mater, they asked me, so I'm going to do it.
This is in lieu of donating to the school.
Well, I don't make enough to donate to the school.
Chris Cody just said pro bono, which I don't think is the
Doesn't that when you do it for something for free? Is that what that means?
Fairly certain it is.
No, not this for free, but not this for free. This is.
Is it only being a lawyer you can be pro bono for free?
I think of pro bono as a legal term, not a sports broadcasting term. Generally, not an FIU against UTEP term.
Vice night, Dan. Are you going to head out there?
We will get to Billy's.
Doesn't answer his question.
He hasn't answered my questions about how much he knows about what he's going to be broadcasting tonight. But I am grateful that David is here because he took his time. He wanted to be prepared. He didn't want to react instantaneously on Monday to the atrocities in the Middle East. And so he covered it for 30 minutes on Nothing Personal yesterday. And I suggest you listen to it if you want what I believe to be a measured response that he tried. I don't know how successful he was to take some of the emotion out of it and speak plainly about some of the things that I think we can all agree on. Stugotz, I told you on Monday, I woke up, this has never happened to me before, not from drinking, not from sickness. I wake up Monday morning and I'm just so sick, and I'm not actually sick, that I just vomit because what I'm seeing is that kind of horrifying. So I think the thing that we share in the human condition is the initial thing is to be shell-shocked, and then the next thing should be to condemn violence of any sort against innocent people, to condemn hatred of any kind, terrorism, acts of terrorism, and to condemn anti-Semitism and all forms of hate. I think reasonable people can agree in those places. But where do I go after that conversationally, David? I know that people can't even agree on that, right?
Right. You're already wrong.
Okay, but we can't agree on anything. But I think reasonable people can say you shouldn't go immediately from, a slaughter at a school to talking immediately about gun control and talking about the politics and the places you can argue. The slaughtering of innocent people, I think we can all agree as human beings. Not right in any way, and needs to be condemned loudly at every turn. But where do we go after that?
Well, I'll tell you where I had to go today, because I spent about 10 minutes of the show that it just got released, that I just recorded before this, responding to certain of the extreme responses that I got as a reaction to my Nothing Personal episode yesterday. And it made me very sad, because I heard from it from both sides. I heard from Jewish people who said that how dare I in any way comment that it's possible that there are Palestinians where there could be an argument for a two-state solution, or there could be an argument where the pro-Palestinian rallies that are taking place are anything other than anti-Semitism, which they are. But they were angry with me because I did not simply say hard stop, that it is absolutely unacceptable. What I said is unacceptable is the terrorism, and that's the hard stop. What I also said is there is a real discussion to be had, and it is a real debate that you can have on how to figure out the geopolitical issues that exist in that region, whether or not a two-state solution, what you do with Gaza, whether or not what Israel has done is correct in every way or incorrect in every way. Those are meaningful discussions where reasonable people can differ. But the people, and I don't want to call them friends, I'll call them acquaintances, because as I said on the show, people use that word too much. Too many friends. I don't have that many friends. I have a lot of acquaintances. But then I heard from people on the other extreme telling me that the Israelis, the women, the children, the babies had it coming because of the way they've been treated as Palestinians. And what really bothered me about having to deal with that is it reminded me that we are now in a world and in a country and in a world where the extremes are the loudest, and the people in the center with no emotion, which is my specialty, we're being quashed. Because if you don't have the emotion and you don't have the extreme view and you don't yell the loudest, then you're not going to be heard because you can't be right. And this situation in Israel, it calls for people who are rational and unemotional. Because what Hamas did was not based on rational thought or behavior. They did it because they want to kill Jews. That's all they want to do. And that's what they did, and they're not going to stop. The reaction of Netanyahu in Israel is not measured. He is going to wipe out Gaza, empty it, kill them all. Innocent people, guilty people, extremists, people in the center, people who are innocent. And is that going to get to a solution? No, but he has to do it. And so now we're in a position, because Hamas did this, that we are taking steps that will be decades, at least, before we can possibly find a way to return to any sort of rational behavior or existence there. And that is part of the problem. And we've seen it happen in other parts of the world. We've seen it happen in African nations when this type of genocide and murder of civilians happens. And it sets them back economically. It sets them back religiously. It sets them back from a human condition. So I spend today not vomiting, Dan. I spend today wondering what we can do with our platform to try to be louder in the center, and whether or not there's even a chance when you're yelling into the wind that you just stop because you lose your voice. But I don't plan on losing my voice anytime soon, Dan.
Do you think there's a chance? Because I don't, David.
I don't want to say that, Stu, because the minute I say it, I'm defeated. And the minute, why do it? Why do a show? Why use your platform to try to explain to people what's actually happening? And why, if you're going to be quiet, it's the old story when you're in a legal fight and you're told you have to stay quiet. Remember that Trevor Bauer, I had to be quiet. I was in the middle of a lawsuit. Now I can tell my truth because there's no more lawsuits, whatever his truth is. And I only bring that up because that's the most recent example of someone who was forced to be quiet and then was thrilled to not be. it's dangerous when you don't have to be quiet, but it's way more dangerous when you do. So, Stu, I'm not willing to.
What else has been surprising to you about the reaction to what it is that you did? Again, we'll tell the audience that he spent, this is difficult to do as subject matter. 30 minutes talking to yourself, by yourself, about this is something that John Oliver has 20 writers to do once a week on subject matter that is that is this historic and this dense and has this much polarization around it before you arrive, Stugotz, at what seems to me the basic formulaic simplicity of any human beings can understand. Don't slaughter innocent human beings. Like that seems that seems to be a pretty easy place for most people to agree on things. But when we arrive at an escalation, Samson, from suicide bombers, right? An escalation from suicide bombers where you don't think there can be an escalation because this goes back for so much time. I don't know how it is that any of this can be discussed reasonably. Like, I don't know the smart way to discuss this with people because it is so charged emotionally.
But the reason that it's charged emotionally is that people pay attention to what they're seeing and what they really what they think they believe. So what has been troubling me the most about the reaction, which was your initial question, is the excuse that people are now using of this terrorist attack to manifest their hatred, their general hatred of people, specifically Jewish people. But really, if you're going to hate one type of person, you're just a hater. If you're prejudiced, if you're racist, it's not that you're racist just against black people. You're racist against anybody that doesn't look like you or think like you or talk like you. And Jewish people have this position where we are forced to defend our feelings about anti-Semitism as though we don't deserve to feel the way we feel because, hey, you're all rich or you have it coming to you. But that's not, to me, what our discussion should ever be framed about. It's always got to be framed about what is it about what we do that makes it that you feel you have to view us the way you do. And you can put anybody in the us category. Anybody, Asian, Jewish, black, brown, whatever your prejudice is, whatever you feel is happening to you, because it's real if you feel it. And I don't know how to deal with the fact that people are emboldened. I'm not going to blame Trump because people do when it's convenient, where they're emboldened to be racist. They're emboldened to be anti-Semitic. But when people feel that they can act in a certain way because they are covered by the masses, that's when you actually get major societal disintegration. And that's where we are. And I'm not saying that we can't talk about sports or the world is coming to an end or look out, the sky is falling. I'm saying that people feel more free to exhibit what they used to keep quiet and hidden. They're now emboldened to share it, and that scares the shit out of me.
Are you ready to take your sports listening to the next level? We've all had enough of the hot takes, fake debates, and recycled national headlines. I'm Todd Furman, and alongside my co-host Payne, Bet the Board is the podcast for sports fans and bettors alike. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday during football season, Bet the Board brings you the essential insights you need to gain an edge at the betting window or dominate your DFS and season-long fantasy leagues. We combine proprietary, data-driven insight and market perspective to preview the biggest football games through a betting lens that's digestible and entertaining for bettors and non-bettors alike. Bet the Board pulls no punches when it comes to the teams, coaches, and players you watch every weekend, but you'll quickly grow to love our honest information not heard anywhere else in the podcast space. Enjoy Bet the Board on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Bet the Board ad-free on Wondery Plus. It pays to listen.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is brought to you by KFC's new hot and spicy wings. Get fired up this fantasy season with 8 pieces of spicy marinated hand-breaded wings for just $4.99. Are you kidding me? They're a can't-miss call for whatever the fantasy gods throw your way. In the midst of a managerial hot streak, keep it rolling with KFC's new hot and spicy wings. Did you just assemble the worst lineup in fantasy history? Who cares? You can get 8 KFC new hot and spicy wings for $4.99 right now. Marinated in spice, hand-breaded to perfection. KFC's new hot and spicy wings are here. 8 pieces for just $4.99. It's finger-licking good.
Don Le Batard.
You getting started on the breakfast flan?
Oh, man, I've been singing the song to myself all morning long. Breakfast flan. Stugotz. Have you never heard the breakfast flan song?
No, hit me with it.
Okay. I wish I had some breakfast flan. Breakfast flan. Where can I find a breakfast like that? This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Dan, there are two separate discussions to be had as it relates to this. One is the land and who should be living on that land, and that's a discussion for another time. That's not for now. It's what Hamas did, and we can all agree that what they did, it was a terrorist act, and it was wrong. They killed innocent people. They killed innocent babies. They raped innocent people. They killed them after they raped them. That's the discussion that should be had. How they're going about doing it. And the interesting thing is how it's carried over to the United States, because David's right. People are emboldened right now, where I have Jewish friends who are afraid to walk out of their apartment in New York City because Palestinian flags are flying everywhere, and they're Jewish and they're afraid to walk outside. They don't want to wear their Jewish star necklace that they usually wear every single day. They're almost ashamed of being Jewish.
You say there are only two discussions to be had, but David covered this on Nothing Personal. That's not exactly what was happening on the campuses of Harvard and Yale. It wasn't just two discussions that are being had. But I know that in trying to talk about this with Jeremy earlier this week, he couldn't do it. He thought he was going to cry. He couldn't get in on the conversation because he couldn't get through the emotions of, I feel unsafe and people who I love are unsafe. And it feels like anti-Semitism is alive and well because look at your television. This can't be okay by anybody.
Yeah. I've had like a million different thoughts run through my head this week. I am Jewish. I have family who has chosen to live in Israel. Americans who have made the decision to make the trek and now live in Israel. There was a time where they lived in what was considered occupied territory in Gaza, thanks to my aunt and uncle basically bullying them to move. They moved, and thank God they seem to be safe right now. But what's complicated about this, as a very left-leaning American Jew, is my own thoughts on Zionism and Israel and Israel's government are one thing. That's a conversation to be had, as Stu said, somewhat at a different time. Because what's happened now with Hamas is a blatant terrorist attack. You can talk about the desperation and the poor circumstances of the Palestinian people in Gaza and feel that level of sympathy for them without praising what Hamas did. And no different than, and it is slightly different. I won't say no different than, but no different than I wouldn't want everyone around the world to view me as an American citizen based off of whoever my elected leaders are. I, as a Palestinian, wouldn't want to be painted with a blanket, I'm a terrorist or a bad person who's automatically anti-Semitic and hates Jews because I live in this territory that, by the way, I've been displaced into. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of why Israel as the Jewish state exists in the way that it does, and the establishment of it through all of these governments in Europe and the United States post-World War II because of a systemic Holocaust that wiped out the Jewish population. That's the reason all of these Palestinians are displaced. We make this an argument about Jews and Muslims and territory when realistically we're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of years of all sorts of religious ideologies persecuting against the Jews and against the Muslims. White Christians in Europe forcing the hand of the Jewish people to flee for their lives. But now we are in this never-ending hellscape of terrorist attack from Hamas and horrendous. I mean, the things that are going to happen to the innocent Palestinians that are about to happen as a response through these airstrikes and the cutting off of food and water. That's also inhumane. I don't know. This is not me doing a both sidesing. This is also not me. I'm not trying to say that whatever Israel does can even come close to what we've witnessed in these videos of what Hamas has done. It's completely inhumane. It's unfathomable. But it's put me in this position of thinking and talking in circles because I don't believe there are solutions here. With like the toothpaste is out of the tube, and there is no way. Like we've seen it for hundreds, if not thousands of years. There's this desperation and this lack of solution, and it stinks that we don't have the time or the patience to take a moment to just breathe in the horror of what's been done before jumping to all of these other conversations about the why.
Oh, but I think that's what happens when people feel entirely helpless, when they want to have some control over something. So this is why conversationally it seems like everyone has an opinion on this. Everyone is trying to get in on a conversation. I think it's just a mass helplessness. But David said something about not wanting to make this the end of the world. It's not a big step from here to the end of the world, David. I'm not even dabbling in hyperbole. Like, once you reach these levels of escalation on desperation and the countermeasure is going to be as, comparably horrific to what it is that you just saw in terms of innocent people.
Dan, you are. I'm sorry, but you are dabbling in hyperbole. And I didn't listen to your show when back years ago when there was genocide in Rwanda, or during the
but what escalates to world war is what I'm talking about. What escalates to
this does not. So one of the things that we do have to keep in mind, and I am sensitive to this because I'm Jewish. However, there are many people. This is a little off the subject. There were cast members on Survivor with me. They had never met a Jewish person. Never. And they were adults. I think sometimes I forget, because I live in New York on the Upper East Side, what it is to be a minority because I'm surrounded as a majority here. The fact of the matter is that around the country and around the world, what's going on in Israel, it's not great. They read about it, they know a little bit, and then they say, all right, what are we doing tonight? It's not the end of the world for the world, because these types of things happen to all sorts of people. It's not just the Jewish people. It's not just the Palestinian people. Look at the civil wars in Africa. None of it is the end of the world, and none of it is leading to a world war, because no one will escalate it to that. That's the war game situation. It's not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that we can be like Jeremy's saying, which is in paralysis. We can't do that. But we certainly shouldn't be where you are, which is waking up and vomiting, saying it's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. So I think that I live somewhere in the middle of that.
David, I completely understand that, and that's where I would like to be. I think the reason I feel paralysis is I generally, just as me, the individual, feel helpless. It's people who are making a lot more money and have a lot more power who are going to be the ones who decide this, and they have not been doing a good enough job for the last 100 years. And yes, there are things that I feel grateful to be on this platform, getting to just talk through my emotions. I'm grateful that you have the platform that you do to be able to lay out the facts the way that you have as well, because I think that speaking about it with some rationale and speaking about it through the way that we have here is important, so that people who are uninformed can learn. Because I think that the biggest thing here is we are in a society, as you mentioned, that is so quick to jump to opinions on everything, particularly on social media, particularly within extremes. And so, you've got all sorts of people on social media right now. We were talking a little bit before the show about, the blue checkmark replies on Twitter right now are some of the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life.
And a lot of fake videos, too. A lot of AI, a lot of stuff that you see around propaganda that's meant to create disruption and division on purpose. It's one of the dangers of social media being controlled by a few with political leanings, that you get a freedom on social media that distorts the truth in a way that's acidic and poisonous.
Oh, you mean somebody who comes from an apartheid state running the most important social media that we have for information being a bit of an issue? Maybe. Look, the part of it that is complicated here, again, as an American Jew, is I've faced anti-Semitism before, but it's never been in a it's often not in the blanket way that we look at those things. It's been meeting a kid before winter break of my freshman year who, when I told him I wasn't going home for Christmas break, that it was Hanukkah break for me, he looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. Some kid from the Panhandle in Florida. And then as soon as I told him, hey, I'm Jewish and you've known me all year and I'm no different than what you knew before, I looked around my classroom and I said, hey guys, who else is Jewish in here? And like 5 other kids raised their hands, and he was shocked. And I was like, yeah, you've been interacting with Jewish kids all year long and you had no idea. Anti-Semitism comes up in different forms, and it is not anti-Semitic to be critical of Israel's government, but now anti-Semites are using this as an opportunity to be violently anti-Semitic, and that's the part that is mind-blowing here, disappointing, and continues to leave me in this horrified state.
Jeremy, I would just tell you that you do have the power, and it's one at a time. It's one person at a time. So if you think you don't have the money, you don't have the gravitas, it's not true, because in your circles, in your everyday interactions, what we all have to do is only what we can do, which is when we come across people, it's just to have conversations. It's just to talk about that there are different sides to the story and that we are all just people. And it sounds so syrupy and so rainbow and unicorn, but it's up to everybody individually, because if you say that you can't do anything and you've got a platform bigger than most, then imagine what you're telling people who feel like they're just up against it,
You're right.
With nobody listening. I think everybody has someone listening, because the most important way to stop racism, forget anti-Semitism, how about all racism? It's to educate the next generation so that they can ignore the way their parents are. That's the only way it's going to stop, is when people see their parents as racist and say, wow, I'm not going to be that. And you know what? It happens a lot in my circles. There's a lot of 80-year-old white baseball people who are racist. And you know what? There's a lot of 50-year-old white baseball people who aren't. So it can change. And then maybe it's what we always dreamt about with building generations of fans. It takes time. But for people who think they don't have power, I disagree. You do have it, Jeremy. You got to use it.
Welcome back, Whitty. Just some light stuff for you here to start your return. We will segue into lighter sports stuff after this.
Hey guys, it's Tony. US Cellular is introducing US Mode. It's like airplane mode, but for people. You got that? Cool. It's a way to set up your phone so it doesn't get in the way of people really being with each other. Block distractions and make way for a real connection. Give it a try. Visit US Cellular in-store or online, and they'll help set up your phone to US Mode. For free. Really, for free. Even if you're not a customer, they'll still do it. That's how good US Cellular is. Built for superior 5G connection and real human connection. US Cellular. Built for us. Find out more at uscellular.com/findus.
Dan Le Batard. Sports. Stugotz. More sports. This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
David, I'm mad at the Orioles.
Oh, geez.
The Orioles were great all season. I was watching them. They're young. They've got 15 guys under contract who are under 23 years old, and they get smoked by one of the former Marlins pitchers who is dominating the
so many of those
postseason.
Yeah.
Evaldi was here. He was one of the first I ever saw. Honestly, this transformation and this revolution, Evaldi was one of the first I saw where I was watching it. I'm like, he throws 100 miles an hour. How is anyone hitting him? I'm not, David, I know Nolan Ryan and a bunch of others. I'm saying.
What about Matt Lindstrom?
No, yes, Matt
What a name.
Matt Lindstrom as well is in that category. But Eovaldi as a starter, when you brought him up, I thought that guy's going to be great for a long time. And he is going to be great for a long time. Not in a Marlins uniform. He was never great in a Marlins uniform. Just like Brad Hand wasn't any good and was an all-star when he left the Marlins, just like a bunch of other people weren't any good here and now are good in the postseason.
What's your point?
The Orioles got stuffed yesterday by Nathan Eovaldi, who wasn't even good the second half of the season. He wasn't even healthy the second half of the season.
That's not exactly what happened. I don't know if you watched the game. Actually, that sounds like you just watched the box score. What actually happened is the Rangers' offense is as good as the Braves.
That's not true. That's not true. That's simply not true. That's not. That's what you're saying is simply not mathematically true.
You did watch the game?
The Braves. No, that part was true. The Braves are the 1927 Yankees in terms of offense. There's been nothing like them except the 1927 Yankees.
It's funny. We used to talk about the 27 Yankees when you guys would criticize, and Mike and Billy and Chris, you would criticize when we would trade players, or we would say, hey, we're not breaking up the 27 Yankees. We couldn't even win 81 games with these great names on offense. And then the Braves come out, and they really are the 27 Yankees, but the Rangers are just as powerful and just as deep in their lineup, and they crushed Dean Kramer, and I was rooting so hard for him without taking emotion into it, but he pitched for Team Israel and he wanted to take the ball. He had the worst outing of his season and the shortest. He only went 1 2/3. He got rocked by the Rangers, who are a streaky team, and they're on a streak. They're on a heater, a bender, which means they're not going to lose that game yesterday, no matter what Eovaldi did. So I would say Eovaldi was the least and the smallest factor in the Rangers.
The Orioles scored 1 run, David. They scored 1 run.
Are you mad at the Orioles or at the playoff format? Like, who are you mad at?
I am mad that teams...
I had no idea you were such a big Oriole fan.
I am mad that the teams I know to be good this season, the Rays, the Orioles, the Braves, and the Dodgers, clearly better than everybody.
The Orioles scored 8 runs on Sunday. It's not like they scored 1 run all series.
I'm mad at the Orioles. I already said that.
You know what? I'm mad at them too, Dan. I'm with you.
Bandit.
No, David, you know what's going on here? Dan desperately, because the Orioles were a big part of our childhood, of us growing up, of us falling in love with baseball, with those teams, with Earl Weaver and Eddie Murray and Gary Renicky and John Lowenstein and guys like that, and Al Bumry, that Dan wants the Orioles to be relevant again. And you know what, Dan? I'm coming around. I agree with you. I, too, am mad at the Orioles.
The Orioles didn't get swept all season. The Rangers didn't win.
October.
The Rangers didn't win a game from a starting pitcher in like 7 weeks the second half of the season.
I tried to tell you like 3 weeks ago there was no need to start SportsCenter on a Sunday night with the Orioles, and you guys didn't want to listen to me. Told me it's such a great story. And what happens first playoff series they have, they don't even win a playoff game. Waste of time.
Can I tell you a quick story that I got yelled at by my baseball people and the manager at the time? This was a Girardi thing, and also a Jack McKeon thing. I always viewed when pitchers were on a great streak and had not given up a run, that I wanted them to give up a run, and I wanted them to be put in a situation where the game was out of reach and give up a run, because then they wouldn't give up a run when we really needed them not to. The sweep is the same situation. You say the Orioles have never been swept. Well, the odds are they're going to get swept. Everybody gets swept, and they chose a really bad time to do it. So would you ever think it's weird to purposely give up? Like if you've gotten 5 hits in a row, just get an out, because you're not going to get 10 hits in a row, or you haven't given up a run. Just throw a meatball in, give up a run, or blow a save. I always used to think about that, and I never won those arguments.
Don't think you know how odds work. If you think that a team not being swept all season, the odds are that they are then going to get swept. No, the odds would be that they're not going to get swept, because the sample over 162 games suggests that they're not going to get swept, no matter how baseball is.
I actually don't think that's how odds work. Do you think when you get 20 blacks in a row at the roulette table that the odds are more that you're going to get red on the 21st or black?
I'm talking about not a 50-50 chance on something. I'm talking about a 100-win team that wasn't swept once over 162 games.
First time for everything, Dan.
I love breaking the streak on that roulette table, though. If there's like 7 straight blacks, I'm betting that red.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's coming.
Yep.
I don't care what the odds
You can
say.
also,
we are due.
And you can really start to lose confidence, like when you're an always hitter on 16, and then it comes out for you like 3 times in a row. That 4th time that you do it, you're like, I'm really tilting against the odds here.
Can we stop with the 27
are built
Yankees?
on people making irrational decisions based on streaks.
I think the most disheartening thing in gambling is when it lands on green.
The worst.
I always put one sad chip in between the 2 greens because I'm like, I gotta have something.
There's so many sad chips in the roulette table.
This way I won't lose too much. That's your view, Chris. That's your money
Little
management
hedge,
view.
little green hedge.
It is a dream. You are a dream for the casinos.
He really is.
What was your takeaway over the most interesting thing for you as someone who cares about baseball in the first 2 weeks of what it is that we've seen in the postseason?
That I'm disappointed that the narrative has changed so quickly and that baseball let this happen. They let the narrative start by announcing the Tampa Rays attendance is so low. And then the narrative continued with the announcement that ratings are down 18% for the wild card series and that the broadcasters are upset because they're not getting long series because that's what they want and need, and that the big teams are losing. The big teams did not make the playoffs in Yankees, Red Sox, Mets, and now the teams that are left are the Dodgers, which is a nightmare when they get swept by the Diamondbacks tonight. And so I'm upset that people are now using this as a pile-on reason. It's like confirmation bias. Oh, baseball's in trouble. Oh, I don't like baseball. And there was such a great opportunity after such a great regular season to have a great postseason. And so far, it's been very, very underwhelming.
So they told the truth.
I'm not a big fan of that when it comes to marketing.
Same here. A couple of liars cutting it up. I mean,
put that on your tombstone, man.
He's not a big fan of the truth. They simply told the truth. Tampa's attendance blows, and all of the randomness is affecting that the best teams are getting knocked out. And I don't think anyone wants to see a Rangers-Arizona World Series outside of those cities.
I'd like to know, if David were in charge, how would you have promoted the baseball playoffs? Like, what would you have said?
The first thing that I would make sure of is that the Dodgers don't lose tonight.
Really?
I'll start with that.
Okay.
I will make sure
Fixing
that the
games
Braves and
now.
Phillies
Right.
go 5.
Right.
That's very important. And I want to make sure that 2 Texas teams were not in the LCS, so I'm screwed in that regard because it's going to be. And that's a nightmare for baseball.
David, how do you do that? Because people used to say this about David Stern. It's like, David Stern would make sure that the Lakers series would get to 6 games, and he made sure that the Sacramento Kings wouldn't get to the NBA Finals in 2001. Is that a real thing?
There's a simple fix. Toss Angel out there and anything can happen.
Like, is there an ordering of the code red from the commissioner to make longer series?
No. David, what do you know?
He made it seem like there is.
No, let him answer.
David, you're gonna co-sign. You're gonna endorse the commissioners helping fix or tilt the odds in the favor of a certain opponent.
I am going to endorse because I've seen it. There are the umpires in baseball and the referees in basketball are very aware of the following. They're aware of who the stars are. They're aware of what the series score is. And they're aware that basketball wants long series. So if you think that calls aren't made or not made when they can be controlled in order to potentially impact a game, and I'm not talking about Tim Donaghy. I'm not talking about betting on games or fixing games or wanting LA to win like Lewis, that referee. And I'm not saying MLB umpires are betting or fixing games or that the commissioner is telling them to. What I am saying is there are meetings with umpires before every game. I've been in them. The meetings go over what's going on in the game. What are we looking for? What are the trends that we're seeing? What do we want to protect against? And one of the things that we want to protect against is short, bad series. Does that stop sweeps from happening? No. Does it guarantee a 6th or 7th game? No. But when you can be helpful, are you? Is there a time? Let me ask you guys in the NBA.
Dave, you're not.
How many times did you say, "Wow,
David,
that foul wasn't
David,
called"?
you're not far from making the accusation. You don't want to make the accusation, but you're not far from making the accusation that the umpires and referees know that they can control the game so that they can get the business to where the business needs to go. And it doesn't always work, but they have such a control over the game that it's not an edict, but it is an ordered code red. Like you're very close to making the suggestion that the stuff, if not
I'm not
fixed,
going to let you aggregate this or to put words in my mouth. So let me say it very clearly. The referees and the umpires cannot dictate who wins a game, but they are very aware of the situation, and the league is very aware of what they want in a given situation. Now, the Marlins won the World Series in 2003 and beat the Cubs, and baseball did not want it. They were clear, but you can't control an 8-run eighth. So you cannot dictate result, but you can definitely try to form a result. And that happens.
Is this like a home plate umpire goes in with the mentality of, okay, the team that's losing 2-0 in this series, anything borderline is a strike for them, anything borderline is a ball for the other team? Like, is that the way that we're talking about
I feel like
here?
we're giving these umpires way too much credit.
That's also
in
fixed,
by
the way. That's also fixing
well, right.
the game.
That's why I'm asking the question.